So this is my recap six, my last recap I'm going to do. Basically, I have a couple terms from chapter three I'd like to talk about. So prosmetics is basically um, having a distance between the speaker and the listener. It's always good to have those sort of differences. I know more in Latin countries, like what I was brought up in, Latins or Hispanics, we like to be a little bit more closer when we speak. While there's other Middle Eastern, well, not Middle Eastern, but Eastern countries like Asia, where they like to have more distance and when they speak. So, for example, when before I knew about this, I used to always get close to everybody that I talked with every type of culture. And I've realized in certain instances when I would speak with an Asian culture or someone who was Asian, they would like me to have a little bit more distance when I speak. They didn't really like me being so close. So now I realize that there's a value in giving that distance that they want because it will help them understand, although make them feel more comfortable and inevitably help them understand a little bit more what you have to say because they feel comfortable because you're not invading their personal space that they were raised with. So I'm going to do in the future is actually give them that personal space and help understand what cultures I'm in and adapt to that because I want to be showing that I respect their wishes. I respect giving them that distance that they want, and they'll listen to me in response. Using in chapter three, using artifacts as this is my second term. Um, Using an artifact to basically help relate to what you have to say, or an artifact that is related to what you're speaking of. For example, what I never used an artifact ever when I did any of my speeches, even before I did this class, because I never saw the value in it. And I just felt like using artifacts would be very distracting and it wouldn't make sense to do it. But what I read in the term and actually researched it a little bit more, using an artifact actually really helps when you have a speech because it shows those people that are more visual, that what I have to say actually is real, and it's very beneficial for those type of listeners as well. So since I know that new knowledge, what I'm going to do in the future is actually apply that and maybe bring in an artifact that relates to what I have to say for. So, for example, if I'm speaking about coral reefs, I can bring an actual piece of coral to show my audience that it's very valuable to keep this piece of coral intact. So, for example, that's something I would do in my future speech because now I know it's very valuable to use. To summarize everything, I have one more term from chapter 8, the pseudo conflict or pseudo conflict. Basically, I'm trying to create a conflict, or the definition is there's a conflict that's trying to be created when there's not really a conflict that's there. So, for example, before I knew about this, I had a manager I used to work with that I never really liked because he didn't really want to talk to me as much. And I never realized why he didn't want to talk to me. I never really gave him a reason for him not to like me. So I was always just kept my distance. I was didn't really like him, so because of that, so I didn't really talk to him. And one time I actually created a conflict to talk to another employee about, oh, this guy's a jerk. He doesn't want to talk to me at all. You know, he's a mean guy. But then they told me that he's just very busy. He doesn't really like to talk as much. He's just a very determined worker. So what I realized is, with that new information, that there wasn't actually a conflict after all. He was just very busy, and that was just who he was. So because I learned that, and what I applied that knowledge to is now I don't try to create a conflict when there's a conflict that's not there, unless it was a direct conflict. Um, like if someone directly told me I don't like you, then there's obviously a conflict right there. But if it wasn't actually verbally said or there was any hints of a reason why he wouldn't like me, I shouldn't make those assumptions like that in the future, and I shouldn't make those assumptions to any situation in life. So that basically summarizes my recap six. I'll be sending this as well with my other recaps I sent.